There, I'm Mishri. Moons and suns and stars and the skies. Genshin Impact literally never shuts up about them. With the Moon Sisters event keeping us waiting for the next reveal of what, presumably, seems to be Northcry and its factions, and with the presence of astral assemblages in Tolan, I really have to ask, what is up with the stars in here anyway? Because they find both Vera's melancholy and tales of the snow-winged goose referring to Orion's arm, which is the part of the Milky Way our solar system can be found in, while Octavia goes out to seek Antares, also known as the Star of Scorpio in Little Witch and the Undying Fire. The same book goes on to talk about how the stars beyond Teyvat influence fate, something which is known, yes, but again, if the sky itself is fake, which stars are these? In this little series, I'm going to try and trace the stories behind the various real world stars, planets, asterisms, and constellations that have sneakily found their way into Teyvat and speculate as to how these patterns and threads could be woven into the fate of that world. Like most things in Genshin Impact, it all comes down to Kendria, or in this case, particularly Kaeya, which is why I want to talk about the Pleiades first, especially given how Zhongli's historian friend from the Sumer Academia is named after them. The premise behind this video is simple. The angels are the Pleiades. Timestamps and citations are in the description box, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let's start, shall we? The Pleiades are a star cluster in the zodiacal constellation Taurus, whose position along the ecliptic and high visibility have made them one of the oldest recorded celestial bodies, with Babylonian records as old as from the 26th century BCE noting the role of the Pleiades in timekeeping and marking the changes of the seasons. Depending upon the culture, the asterism is said to have either 6 or 7 stars. However, the legend of a lost sister is a common motif found across the globe. In the northern hemisphere, the cluster is most visible during winter, particularly during November and December. The cluster is named after the daughters of Atlas and Pliny, collectively called the Pleiades, who were companions of Artemis, the goddess of the hunt and the moon. The Greek legend states that Zeus took pity upon Pliny when she tried to escape Orion's unwanted advances, and she and her daughters were turned into the stars that we can see now. The motif of Orion chasing the Pleiades is one that we encounter a lot when we look into the legends surrounding these stars worldwide. Oh, and before I forget, Pliny and her children lived in Arcadia, and Maia, a Pleiad, is the mother of Hermes. In Nordic and Germanic cultures, the Pleiades were known as the boar's throng, depicting the battle formation known as swine array, said to have been devised by Odin himself. Some theorize that the asterism could also refer to Mjolnir, Thor's hammer. In Eurasian cultures, the cluster is often thought to be the rain-jade chased down by the hunter Orion. In China, the Pleiades were known as Mao, the hairy head of the white tiger of the west. In Hinduism, the Pleiades, corresponding to the lunar imagine Kritika, referred to the 6 fiery wives of Agni who raised Kartikeya, the war god. The birth of Kartikeya is celebrated as Kartik Purnima on the full moon of the month of Kritika, which usually covers November and December of the Gregorian calendar. In fact, it is argued that the eyes of peacock feathers associated with the deity Kartikeya refer to the Pleiades themselves. What is up with Kaeya anyway? Moreover, the last 2 characters of Kartikeya's name, when transliterated into Chinese, give you Kaeya's name. The Pleiades Phi connection becomes more interesting once you note that Kaeya's birthday is on November 30, and November is when the Aztecs held their new fire ceremony once every 52 years, lest the stellar demons known as Sidzini may descend and bring destruction to the world. The new fire ceremony was conducted at midnight when the Pleiades passed through the meridian, and sacrifices were made to the god of war and the sun Huitzilopochtli. Interestingly, some argue that Huitzilopochtli himself may have been a Sidzimitel, leaning into the iconography of a fiery stellar being that descends from the heavens. Did you notice the 6 astral assemblages in Tolan that cleanse the abyss from the heart of the sacred mountain? The motif of 6 flames that cleanse the land from darkness is once again repeated in the World Quest, as it did in Act 4 of the Natlan Archon quest. In a German fairy tale, the occultation of the Pleiades by the moon is recorded as a wolf eating 6 of the 7 little goats left behind by the mother goat. The wolf is represented by the moon, Venus is the mother goat, and the kids are the Pleiades. When the moon occludes the Pleiades, it covers up 6 of the 7 visible stars, and the little goat in the tail hid behind a giant clock. Notably, it is argued that the tale of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a dramatized retelling of the alternation of the positions of the sun and the moon in winter, when the moon, depicted by the wicked queen, passes over the Pleiades thrice. In this tale, the cluster represents the seven dwarfs who help hide the sun in winter, ensuring that Snow White remains safe. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs inspired the in-game text Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies, whose title in Chinese reads White Princess and the Six Dwarfs. Are the Pygmies inspired by the Pleiades, especially given how they're number 6? When it comes to Jewish literature, the Pleiades is associated with the maiden Ishtar, who promised to surrender herself to the angel Shemhazai if he revealed the ineffable name to her. After he did so, she rebuffed his advances and ascended to heaven, and God placed Ishtar into the sky as she had kept herself aloof from sin. Ishtar is also associated with Venus in some versions of the tale. And of course, Ishtar is identified with Ishtar, whom we know in-game as Isroth, the ruler of time and the thousand winds herself. Some speculate that the seven angels mentioned in Revelations could refer to the Pleiades, and that the seven stars Jesus holds could also refer to the asterism, who act as the eyes of the lamp and as his doors. Ishtar, by the way, is also depicted as a door. It is curious that the Tanith tribe, who worshipped the goddess of flowers Asili, are named after the Carthaginian goddess Tanith, who is thought to have been syncretized with the Phoenician goddess Astarte over time. And of course, Astarte was known as Ishtar in Assyria. The nexus between doors, angels, the Pleiades, and Ishtaroth becomes more intriguing once you note that the Greek poet Pindar compared the nymphs to a flock of doves in an epic 450 BC pun. In this regard, Columba's dove wings and covered eyes make me wonder whether she is Celia herself, given that the finale of the Deep Gallery's artifact set talks about how the angels were forbidden from gazing into the eyes of another. Plus, in the Dirge of Wilkes questline, when the traveler gazes upon Nabu Malikata's form in the Memories of the Jinn, they describe her eyes as nothingness. Ishtar's nexus to Venus is known, but what about the Pleiades themselves? The white tiger, whose head is represented by the asterism, is the symbol of the West in China, associated with the agent of metal in Wuxing, representing downward movement of yin, the winter, and the lungs. The agent of metal is also associated with a substantive part of the soul known as Po, in turn connected to lunar brightness. Remember the boatman from Surumi Island taking souls to lunar mansions? Venus, being both the morning star and the evening star, is pretty well known, and in Aztec mythology, Venus as Quetzalcoatl was the lord of the winds associated with the west. My friend Al pointed out that Kukulkan's manipulation of the traveler and little one culminated in the westward movement of the player as the quest continued, which in turn is reflected in the larger scale of the game, as Paimon, the most devoted servant of Lucifer, rules over the west and is associated again with the winds. And of course, Kukulkan is Quetzalcoatl's Maya counterpart. Now, I don't want to delve too deep into Venus here, as then this video could possibly never end. But it is important to note that Quetzalcoatl and his dagger twin Xolotl, sometimes conflated with the planet Mercury, were associated with timekeeping, thanks to Quetzalcoatl's syncretism with Zihuatl, who is said to rule over the 365-day year Zihuatl in his role as Zihuatacoatl, the turquoise lord of the year. And when it comes to the West, it's said that a major inspiration behind the Rhine maidens in Richard Wagner's opera, Der Ring des Nibelungen, were the Hesperides associated with the dusk. Wagner was also influenced by the Nordic goddess Idun in his characterization of Freyja, who is sometimes conflated with Frigg, the Lady of Friday, which is again the day of Venus. Curiously, just like the Pleiades themselves, according to some sources, the Hesperides too were daughters of the Titan Atlas, and some propose that the Pleiades were known as Hesperides when they showed up during and after the sunset. I promise, this is the last time I will bring up Venus when it comes to the Pleiades, but Red the Rebellious on Hoyolab theorized that Kaeya was about 8 or 9 years old when he was left at the Dawn Winery by his father. Considering that syzygies and astronomical symbolism are everywhere in the game, I am inclined to believe so too, because the conjunction of Venus and the Pleiades takes place once every 8 years, with the last conjunction taking place on April 3rd, 2020, and the next conjunction predicted to happen on April 3rd, 2028. The Pleiades, having both boar and angelic symbolism, makes me view Wulfhere's dialogues from Imaginarium Theatre in a completely different light. The Seelies, being the boars mentioned by Wulfhere, makes the nexus between them and the Pleiades quite intriguing, especially when you look at the tale of Coelor and Ukuku, wherein Coelor, The stellar daughter of the sun, loses her brilliance when she falls to the earth. Koilur is the star goddess of the Quechua peoples, and Koilur Riti is a festival celebrated every year, now syncretized with Christianity, wherein the heliacal rising of the Pleiades is celebrated as a harvest festival. In Jewish literature, the fall or heliacal setting of the Pleiades is associated with the flood brought forth by God in Genesis, and the Enochian tradition also views the Pleiades as fallen angels. If you're curious about the Nephilim mention, you won't have to wait too long. Both Orion and the Pleiades are associated with Nephilim, which makes the sun's turning away from Kuntur quite intriguing. Does that mean Bennett is a Nephilim? I mean, what the hell? Sure. Orion, on the other hand, is a completely different kind of worms to unlock. If the angel from the finale of the Deep Galleries is the Pleiades, then the rules of the sky dictate that the Voyager has to be Orion, right? Especially given how Orion keeps chasing the Pleiades. The Milky Way is a spiral galaxy too. Quick 5-second crack theory. What if Teyvat is the Earth lost to time that Albedo talks about? Huh? In my next essay, I will discuss Orion, the Voyager, the random Arcadia mentions that haunt me, and more fun star stuff. Until then, isn't it quite crazy that the frost moon said to stop turning, and the Ariana Hot realm mentioned in Midnight's Walls is Corona Borealis, the celestial home of Lady Ariana Hot from Celtic literature? Corona Borealis, which is also associated with Ishtar Inanna thanks to Nanaya syncretism, and the constellation looks so much like Rosaria's Pina Corona. Is Rosaria a lost frost moon phenon? Is that why Andres Boreas has Animo and Gaio powers? Is Ishtar Daria the frost moon?
This moment will be frozen in time.
Thank you, Kaeya. That's very cool. See you guys next time.